Hey everybody, it's Amy Gretchen. Welcome back. So in this video, I am working on what you may call a foundation page for my 2022 December daily album. So I tend not to do a lot of these foundation pages because the times that I've done it in the past, I feel like I never even end up using the pages, but it really is nice to have some more time intensive pages completed, or maybe some embellishments completed, so that you can just add them into your project where you want to fit them in. So one of the things that I really want to do in my album this year is stitching. If you saw my album last year, I actually did do a small cross stitch onto paper. I really started getting back into cross stitch last fall. And so that's why I wanted to add it into my 2021 album. And I'm still into stitching. I would say I'm probably into stitching even more. I feel like I've gone down a really big rabbit hole, but I want to add more of that in my 2022 album. So I was seeking after ways that I could add some stitching in a quicker way. And I decided that doing an alphabet with lines instead of crosses, like in cross stitch, would be such a time saver. Now I likely am going to speed up this video because it is long, but from the time that I started and completed it, I think it was about 50 minutes. So just keep that in mind. This is going to take some time if you're going to want to work on this, but I find stitching to be very calming and very soothing, and that's one of the reasons why I really love to do it. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I create in general, is because I find it very calming and very soothing. All right, so I just want to dive into what I'm actually doing right now. So I created this in Illustrator, and then I sent it to my Silhouette, and I let Silhouette cut out these little holes. And these little holes are what is going to guide us, so we know exactly where to put our needle and how to thread this. So it's going to thread accurately and it's going to look like words. So you're probably wondering, if I had Silhouette cut out all these holes, then why am I going through and using a paper piercer on them? So the first thing I want you guys to realize is you can't really see the amount of pressure that I'm using, but I'm using very light pressure because as I'm tapping the little holes, the back part is popping out. So for the most part, my Silhouette did a really good job cutting out the circles, but I feel like there was a lot of, for lack of a better term, like hanging chads. Like there were some of the paper that was hanging off, some of the paper that it had cut it, but it hadn't gone all the way through. And so I did a test run of this, and I found it to go a lot faster if I just went through and did the paper piercer first. And so that's why I went ahead and did that. You do not have to do that if you don't want to take that step, but I think it actually saves a lot of time doing it that way. All right, so now that we are done with piercing the holes, we are going to move on to the stitching portion. So I'm just going to move my foam pad out of the way and put my paper piercer away. And I'm going to grab over my DMC floss. I'm using 3777 for this. It's a really pretty muted red, like that it's not too bright. And I'm using 3 strands of floss for this. And because of that, I'm using a needle a little bit bigger than I normally do, which is a size 24. And it goes in and out of the paper really well. So no problems with that there. But I did feel like it was a little bit easier to thread the needle using 3 strands of floss. So one of the other things you're going to need for this is you're going to need some tape. I actually used some washi tape that I had on my desk, but hindsight, I wish I had just used clear tape. I did go back and change the washi for the clear because I could see the washi tape on the other side. The paper that I'm using for this was 80-pound paper. I did want to use 100-pound, but I felt like my machine would not cut out as well on 100 pounds. So that's why I ended up using 80 pounds. So just keep that in mind when you're taping down whatever it is that you're using to tape. You don't want to be able to see it on the other side. But if you're using a darker cardstock, then you will not have to worry about this at all. So the one thing I just want you guys to understand is this kind of looks really complicated in that there's just like a whole bunch of dots everywhere. But if you keep in mind that with every stitch, there's going to be 2 dots associated with that stitch, then it's really easy to follow along. It's almost just like following a map. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is decide if we're going to start at the bottom or the top. And then after that, we're going to decide if we're going to start at the right or the left. Now, I keep trying to think about the best way to explain exactly how to do this without making it complicated, because it's actually not complicated, but when you're looking at a bunch of holes on a page, it's really hard to know where to begin. So if you are interested in this file, I will have it on Etsy, and I will include with that file, obviously, the portion that you're going to want to cut out, but I'm also going to include a PDF that just shows you the holes. And what I want you to do is print it out and start drawing lines between the holes. So starting, like I said, either at the top or the bottom, at the very bottom hole, and going up to the next hole. And then above that, going up to the next hole. And then there's a space, a hole, and then going up to the next hole. And that way you can start to see the words appear, the letters appear. Because what we're doing is we're combining those holes to make our stitch. But you want to make sure that you're not going in the middle of a stitch. So if you start at the very bottom and move your way up, then you'll always be accurate, because you'll always have the 2 stitches associated, the 2 holes associated with that stitch. So I know that probably sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, but hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing and it will make sense. Like I'm putting this on real time so you can see exactly what I'm doing, where I'm going to the bottom hole right now, and then I'm going up to the next hole, which is very little. And then I'm going over to the bottom hole and I'm going back up. And again, it's a very small stitch. Then I'm going back down to the bottom hole and then going up. You can see it's a very small stitch. Let's do it again. Going in the bottom hole. Sorry, I'm off screen there. And then I'm going to go up to the next hole. And I believe the next hole is going to be a little bit longer, but let's see. I'm not 100% sure. Okay, here we go. Nope, it's a little bit smaller, but above that, there's another stitch. So I'm going to go up that hole, and then I'm going to go up the next hole. And then I'm going to go up the hole right above that. And then I'm going to go down the closest hole in the same line. And again, go up the next hole and then down the closest hole. And that way I'm going to make sure that I've got the accurate stitch. So hopefully that makes sense. If you start at the bottom or if you start at the top, you just want to make sure that you're going to the next stitch and then up the next stitch and then down the next stitch. So it is hard to explain. I am showing you visually, and I'm really hoping you can see it visually. If you are really struggling, you could actually draw in with a very light pencil, because you will cover it up with the stitch, but you could draw it in so you can actually see it right on the piece of paper. Or like I said, you could take the PDF and you could draw in the lines with the PDF, and that can help be quote unquote like a map and really help you to be able to make sure that you're stitching the correct holes together to make the appropriate line. So hopefully that makes some sense. So I am going to allow you guys just to kind of watch what I'm doing and see what I'm doing. But I say again, you just start at one end and then move up and move up. Now, I do kind of go back and forth a little bit, but that's because I'm trying to save on my, what do you call it? My thread. But you don't have to do that. You could just go up and back, up and back, up and back, up and back. You could go all the way up to the top if you wanted and then come all the way back down. I'm just choosing to do each word individually, like I said, to not use as much thread. So it's just totally up to you. So watch what I'm doing. If you guys have any questions, you can ask me down below. You can DM me on Instagram. You can email me. Like I said, this file is going to be available on Etsy, and I would encourage you to print out the PDF and use your pencil to start drawing it in so you can see. And again, you can also draw it in right onto this piece of paper so you can see how it's supposed to be stitched together as well. So it's actually not complicated at all, but you kind of have to wrap your mind around what we're doing. We are creating a letter using a vertical stitch. And when you can wrap your mind around that, then you can start to see the letters, and it becomes a lot easier to realize what you're doing and to realize how easy it is to stitch this together. It came really quickly for me once I did like the first, I don't know, well, I created it, so it wasn't difficult for me to understand what was going on. But if you just go up one, down one, up one, down one, in the same line, you're good, and it's going to be gold. So anyway, and if you make a mistake, which, man, I always make a mistake when I'm stitching, you just pull it out and you redo it. So anyway, sorry that as I'm turning it around and going into the back that I'm kind of going off screen, but I'm just going up the next hole. So anyway, hopefully that all makes sense. I am going to keep this on for a bit just so you can watch me work. Of course, if you don't want to see this anymore, you can just speed through, but I will catch you at the end of this. All right, so I'm hopping back on here. First of all, I just want to say I'm sorry that I was off the screen so much, but second of all, you can see that my thread was coming to an end, and so I wanted to start over because it was getting a little bit too difficult. So I thought I would show you how I pull out the 3 threads. So DMC floss, if you are not aware of it, it's like 6 threads together, and so I'm going to take 3 of them out. And if you guys are interested to see how I organize my DNC floss, I'd be happy to share that with you guys because I have, I think, a really great organization system for it. So anyway, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab one thread, hold it with one hand, and then pull the other 5 off with the other hand. And I'm going to do it again. So I'm just going to grab one and then pull the rest of it off. And I'm going to do it one more time, and that will give me my 3 threads. Now, I have never had, when I do it this way, I've never had my stitches tangle or anything like that when I'm trying to separate them, but you do have to do one thread at a time. So now you can see that I'm taking those 3 threads and I'm going to put them back together, and I'm just going to go ahead and thread my needle. But I just wanted to hop on here and show you how I'm doing that in case you guys don't know how to do that or you've never done it before. It's definitely a trick that I have learned as I've, like I said, gotten back into cross stitch, is how to pull those stitches across, and it just makes it so much easier. And I do like to fold my thread in half and then thread it that way. I find that to be much, much easier. And if you're interested, I actually pull, I would say a half a yard. I guess I use about 18 inches. I use about 18 inches for my stitching when I'm starting a stitch. That thread that I'm using right now is about 18 inches. And I don't like to do any longer. I mean, you could do longer, but your thread starts to get worn out as it's going back and forth and getting threaded through the paper. And so I find that it just looks better if you don't do any longer than 18 inches. So that would be my suggestion. You can, of course, do shorter. You could do longer. It's totally up to you. But again, you're just going to want to start at the bottom and then move your way up. I think I actually started in the middle, and that's probably because I know what I'm doing. But just start at the bottom, one of the bottom holes, and then move your way up, and you won't miss a stitch. So anyway, you guys, I'm not going to show you everything I did. In fact, I did try to speed through what I was doing. It just looked insane because obviously I keep flipping the paper back and forth. So I'm going to hop on here and show you the very, very end. And I just want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. And like I said, if you are interested in this file, I will have a link below on my Etsy. You can find it there. And I am more than happy to answer any questions that you have when it comes to using this file. One thing that I did want to make a note of, if you do not have a silhouette, like I said, I will have a PDF, and you could just go through and make a hole punch wherever there is a small dot. And that way you're not using the machine to cut it out, you're just using the hole punch. So keep that in mind if you don't have a silhouette. This is still something that you will be able to do. And of course, I am going to have a few more designs as well, definitely a couple more designs to be able to share with you guys. So hopefully you will give this a try. And if you do, please send me a message, hashtag me, so I can see what you guys create. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Bye.